You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. In many of the colonies, British officials left quickly as Patriots took control. However, in Virginia, the situation was different because the royal governor resisted. On the 20th of April, 1775, during an event known as the Gunpowder Incident, Lord Dunmore, who was the royal governor of Virginia, moved gunpowder from Williamsburg to a British warship on the James River. Dunmore aimed to keep the gunpowder away from the Virginia militia, as he sensed the unrest within the colony was growing. Nevertheless, the Patriot militia, under the leadership of Patrick Henry, managed to pressure Dunmore into compensating for the gunpowder he had removed. In the months that followed, Dunmore did not surrender his efforts. He continued his search for military supplies, attempting to secure them before the Patriots could utilize them. Nonetheless, the Patriot militia often remained one step ahead, relocating supplies beyond his grasp. In a daring initiative, Dunmore issued a decree in November 1775, promising freedom to any enslaved individuals who would defect to the British side and join the fight. Tensions heightened in November at Kemp's Landing, where Dunmore's forces confronted and either killed or captured Patriot militia members. However, at the Battle of Great Bridge on the 9th of December, Patriot forces succeeded in defeating the Loyalist troops, which included the escaped slaves Dunmore had enlisted to form what he termed his Ethiopian Regiment. Following this setback, Dunmore and his remaining forces withdrew to Royal Navy ships off the coast of Norfolk. From this position, they attacked and set Norfolk ablaze on the 1st of January 1776, with Patriots in the town, aiding in the destruction of what remained of this Loyalist stronghold. By the summer, Dunmore was compelled to vacate an island in Chesapeake Bay, marking his final exit from Virginia. James Wright, who was Georgia's royal governor, technically held his position until January 1776. However, everything changed when British ships unexpectedly appeared near Savannah. This event led the local committee of safety to decide it was time to arrest him. People in Georgia, whether they were Patriots or Loyalists, all thought the British fleet was there to back up the governor with military support. Actually, the fleet had been dispatched from the British forces under siege in Boston, Massachusetts, with a mission to obtain rice and other provisions. Governor Wright managed to escape and joined the fleet. In the early part of March, during what is known as the Battle of the Rice Boats, the British were able to leave Savannah with several merchant ships loaded with the rice they had come for. At the start of the war, South Carolina was deeply divided politically. The region around Charleston, known as the Lowlands, was firmly in the camp of the Patriots. On the other hand, the backcountry was home to many who sympathized with the Loyalists. By August 1775, both groups were forming their own militia units. A significant move came in September when a Patriot militia took control of Fort Johnson, a key defense point for Charleston, causing Governor William Campbell to escape to a Royal Navy ship in the harbor. Tensions escalated when Loyalists intercepted a shipment of gunpowder and ammunition that was meant for the Cherokee. This led to the first siege of 96, a key location in western South Carolina by late November. The Patriots were gaining the upper hand in recruiting and in what came to be known as the Snow Campaign. Because of the heavy snowfall, around 5,000 Patriots, led by Colonel Richard Richardson, managed to overpower or drive away most of the Loyalist leaders. Those loyal to the British Crown fled, some to East Florida, others to Cherokee lands. A Cherokee group, the Chickamauga, sided with the British and Loyalists in 1776, only to be defeated by militia from North and South Carolina. For the British, controlling a port in the south was essential for their military operations, including supplying their forces. They planned an expedition to establish a stronghold in the Southern Colonies and recruited Loyalists in North Carolina to support this effort. However, their plans faced delays, and the Loyalist forces meant to join them were soundly defeated at the Battle of Moore's Creek Bridge in February 1776. When General Henry Clinton arrived in North Carolina in May, he found the conditions unsuitable for setting up a base. Upon scouting, Charleston was identified as a valuable target because its defenses were not yet complete. In June 1776, General Clinton and Admiral Sir Peter Parker attempted to take Fort Sullivan, which protected Charleston Harbor, only to face unexpected challenges. Clinton's force of 2,200 men landed on Long Island, next to Sullivan's Island where the fort stood, but found the channel between the two too deep to cross. Opting not to return to their ships, they counted on their naval power to take down the fort. However, the fort, made mostly of palmetto logs, absorbed the cannon fire from the British ships without collapsing, leading to a failed assault. This defeat was a major embarrassment for Clinton, who was forced to call off his campaign in the Carolinas. Clinton and Parker later blamed each other for the failure. Some historians believe that failing to capture Charleston in 1776 was a turning point, leaving Loyalists without support for 3 years and allowing Charleston to aid the American cause until 1780. In Georgia, Patriots made multiple attempts to take down the British forces stationed in St. Augustine, British East Florida. This British outpost was a thorn in the side for the Patriots, as it provided a safe haven for Loyalists who escaped from Georgia and other southern states. These Loyalists were known for launching raids into Georgia, stealing cattle and supplies. The first attempt to oust them was led by Charles Lee, who was in charge of the Southern Department at the time. However, his efforts fizzled when he was called back to join the main army. The second effort was spearheaded in 1777 by Georgia's Governor Button Gwinnett, a name you might recognize as one of the signers of the United States Declaration of Independence. However, he had little support from Robert Howe, the new Southern Department commander, and his attempt didn't fare any better. Gwinnett clashed with his militia commander, Lachlan McIntosh, which didn't help matters. Although some Georgia militia units managed to cross into East Florida, they were stopped at the May Battle of Thomas Creek. The final attempt took place in early 1778. This time, more than 2,000 soldiers from the Continental Army and state militias were mustered for the mission. Yet, it too ended in failure, partly because of disagreements over leadership between Howe and John Houston, the governor of Georgia at the time. A minor confrontation at Alligator Bridge in late June, coupled with the challenges posed by tropical diseases and ongoing command disputes among the Patriot forces, ensured that East Florida remained under British control for the remainder of the war. In 1778, the British shifted their focus back to the southern part of America, aiming to win back control by rallying thousands of Loyalist supporters. This strategy was largely influenced by Loyalist exiles in London, who convinced the British Secretary of State for America, George Germain, of their cause. These exiles, looking to regain their lands and be rewarded for their loyalty to the British Crown, knew they had to overstate how many Loyalists would actually support a British campaign in the South. Their influence on British ministers was significant, backed by business, trading, and family connections some of them had with the British elite. Acting on the belief that there was major support waiting for them, the British were optimistic about their chances. Highlighting this optimism, Cornwallis, while in South Carolina, assured Clinton in a letter that their poor distressed friends in North Carolina were as supportive as ever. However, this belief was largely mistaken, something Cornwallis came to realize as the campaign unfolded. On April 19, 1778, a remarkable battle unfolded as 3 Georgia Navy row galleys took on and captured a trio of British vessels, a Royal Navy brigantine, a provincial sloop from East Florida outfitted for battle, and an armed brig. Fast forward to December 29, 1778, when a formidable British force of 3,500 men, sent from New York under Lieutenant Colonel Archibald Campbell, managed to take Savannah, Georgia, by storm. In a strategic bolstering of forces, Campbell was later joined by Brigadier General Augustine Prevost, who led his troops from St. Augustine in mid-January 1779, commandeering outposts en route. Prevost took the lead in Georgia, sending Campbell and 1,000 soldiers towards Augusta with twin objectives, to take control of the town and to rally Loyalists to their cause. After the fall of Savannah, the American defenders retreated roughly 12 miles upriver to Purrysburg, South Carolina. It was here they regrouped with Major General Benjamin Lincoln, the Southern commander of the Continental Army, who led the majority of his forces from Charleston to counter Prevost's efforts. In what seemed a diversionary tactic by Prevost early in February 1779, a detachment of British troops took Beaufort, prompting Lincoln to dispatch General Moultrie and 300 men to challenge them. The ensuing Battle of Beaufort on February 3rd was inconclusive, with both sides ultimately withdrawing. Meanwhile, Campbell had encountered little resistance in his takeover of Augusta, attracting over 1,000 Loyalist recruits within 2 weeks. However, his efforts were undermined when a Patriot militia, led by Andrew Pickens, decisively defeated a large group of Loyalists at the Battle of Kettle Creek, about 50 miles from Augusta, on February 14, 1779. This defeat highlighted the British Army's inability to safeguard Loyalists, prompting Campbell to abandon Augusta. This retreat was likely hastened by the arrival of John Ashe and over 1,000 North Carolina militia, reinforcing the local forces opposite Augusta in South Carolina. As Campbell made his way back to Savannah, he passed his command to Mark Prevost, Augustine's brother. Mark Prevost then skillfully ambushed Ashe's following force, nearly annihilating the 1,300-strong militia in the March 3rd Battle of Briar Creek. This turn of events underscored the ongoing and fierce competition for control in the southern states during the Revolutionary War. In April, Lincoln saw an increase in his forces, thanks to a large turnout of South Carolina militia and new military supplies arriving through Dutch shipments to Charleston. With this support, he made the strategic decision to head toward Augusta. He left behind 1,000 men under General Moultrie's command in Perrysburg to keep an eye on Augustin Prevost, and on April 23, 1779, he started his march north. Prevost didn't just stand by. He responded by leading 2,500 of his men from Savannah to Perrysburg on April 29th. Moultrie opted not to confront them head-on and retreated toward Charleston. By May 10th, Prevost had advanced to within 10 miles of Charleston, beginning to encounter resistance only then. A couple of days later, Prevost caught wind through an intercepted message that Lincoln, now aware of Prevost's push toward Charleston, was hastily returning from Augusta to help defend the city. This prompted Prevost to pull back to the islands southwest of Charleston, but he left a defensive position at Stono Ferry, near what is today Rantals, South Carolina, to cover his retreat. Upon Lincoln's return, he gathered around 1,200 men, many of whom were untested militia, to chase after Prevost. Their effort, however, was thwarted by the British on June 20, 1779, in what became known as the Battle of Stono Ferry. The British rearguard achieved its goal and subsequently left their position at Stono Ferry a few days later. One of the striking aspects of Prevost's attempt on Charleston was the arbitrary looting and pillaging by his troops, actions that angered both allies and enemies in the South Carolina Low Country alike. Back in October 1779, an effort was made to win back Savannah by French forces and soldiers from the Continental Army. Led by General Lincoln, and bolstered by the support of a French naval squad under Comte d'Estaing, the attempt ended disastrously. The Allied French and American troops faced about 901 losses, in stark contrast to the British's mere 54. The French Navy encountered defenses in Savannah that reminded them of those that had stopped Admiral Peter Parker at Charleston in 1776. Despite the artillery fire making little impact on the fortifications, Comte d'Estaing chose to proceed with the attack after the naval attack didn't do the trick, a decision different from the one at Charleston, where Clinton opted not to attack Fort Moultrie by land. During this aggressive move, Count Kazimierz Pułaski, a Polish leader of American cavalry, was mortally wounded. With Savannah now firmly in British hands, Clinton was in a position to start a fresh assault on Charleston, South Carolina, revisiting his previous unsuccessful attempt in 1776. Lincoln, in response, shifted his remaining forces to Charleston to help beef up its defenses. In 1780, Clinton moved to take Charleston, implementing a blockade of the harbor in March and amassing about 10,000 troops around the city. His approach to the city went unchallenged. Commodore Abraham Whipple, the American naval commander, sank 5 of his 8 frigates in the harbor to create a defensive barrier. Meanwhile, inside Charleston, General Lincoln was in charge of around 2,650 Continental soldiers and 2,500 militiamen. British Lieutenant Colonel Banastra Tarleton made sure no reinforcements or supplies could reach the city by securing victories at Monk's Corner in April and Leynood's Ferry in early May, effectively surrounding Charleston. Clinton then started to construct siege lines around the city and began bombarding it on March 11th. By May 12, 1780, with the situation becoming untenable, General Lincoln surrendered his force of 5,000 men. This event marked the largest surrender of U.S. troops until the outbreak of the American Civil War. Despite minimal casualties, Clinton's capture of Charleston represented a major British triumph, arguably their most significant of the war, leaving the American military presence in the South shattered. However, the tables began to turn when Nathaniel Greene managed to elude Cornwallis after the Battle of Guilford Courthouse in 1781, diminishing British control in the South. After the fall of Charleston, remnants of the Southern Continental Army retreated towards North Carolina, but were aggressively pursued by Tarleton's British Legion, culminating in a decisive British victory at the Battle of Waxhaws on May 29th. Following this battle, there were allegations from the Patriot side that Tarleton's men had mercilessly killed American soldiers attempting to surrender. This led to the term Tarleton's Quarter, symbolizing his alleged ruthlessness. While historians continue to debate the occurrence of a massacre, the belief in Tarleton's Quarter fueled a vengeful spirit among the Patriots. This was evident when many Loyalist militiamen, after surrendering at the Battle of Kings Mountain, were killed by Patriots invoking Tarleton's Quarters. Tarleton himself later wrote an account of the war, documenting these and other events. After the city of Charleston fell, the organized fight led by the American military in the southern states almost disappeared. Despite this, the states kept running their governments, and small groups of fighters, known as partisans, led by people like Francis Marion, Thomas Sumter, William R. Davie, Andrew Pickens, and Elijah Clark, kept the struggle alive. The British command shifted from General Clinton to Lord Cornwallis, who faced a new American force led by General Horatio Gates, the hero of Saratoga. Unfortunately, Gates faced a massive defeat at the Battle of Camden on August 16, 1780, an event that stands as one of the worst losses in U.S. military history. This defeat didn't stop the British. Cornwallis set his sights on invading North Carolina. Cornwallis's plans encountered obstacles in North Carolina, where attempts to rally local loyalist support were thwarted. The decisive moment came with the Battle of Kings Mountain on October 7, 1780, where a group of patriot militias, known as the Overmountain Men, who had trekked over the Appalachian Mountains, defeated a larger loyalist force. This battle was a significant setback for the British, disrupting their strategy to build up a large base of loyalist support in the area. Militia forces continued to harass British supply lines, forcing Cornwallis to pull back and spend the winter in South Carolina. The Continental Army responded by replacing Gates with General Nathaniel Greene, one of George Washington's most trusted officers. Greene divided his forces, sending about 1,000 men with General Daniel Morgan, who then decisively defeated Tarleton's troops at the Battle of Cowpens on January 17, 1781. This victory echoed the success at Kings Mountain, leading to criticism of Cornwallis for scattering his forces without sufficient backup. Greene continued to engage the British in a series of small battles and maneuvers known as the Race to the Dan, wearing down the British forces without giving them any strategic gain, despite them winning most encounters. Cornwallis, aware that Greene had split his army, aimed to engage and defeat these divided forces before they could reunite. In an effort to quickly catch up with the Patriot forces, Cornwallis ordered his troops to carry only essential items. Upon hearing of Cornwallis's decision, Greene famously exclaimed, "Then he is ours." The lack of provisions eventually troubled the British campaign. In the subsequent battles, including the Battle of Cowan's Ford, where Greene's forces were weakened but not defeated, around 2,000 British soldiers lost their lives in South and North Carolina. Greene, likening his strategy to that of the ancient Roman general Quintus Fabius Maximus, adopted the motto, "We fight, get beat, rise and fight again," brilliantly capturing his approach to gradually wear down the enemy. This strategy culminated near New Garden, modern-day Greensboro, North Carolina, where, despite a tactical win, the British suffered heavy losses at the Battle of Guilford Court House, forcing Cornwallis to retreat for supplies and reinforcements. As Cornwallis couldn't crush Greene's forces, he recognized the importance of Virginia as a supply line for the American resistance, and decided to cut it off, moving against Clinton's wishes. The campaign in Virginia, marked by raids by British forces under William Phillips and Benedict Arnold, saw massive destruction to the colonists' tobacco supplies, a key economic resource funding the American war effort. This phase, known as the Tobacco War, saw the destruction of roughly 10 million pounds of tobacco. Meanwhile, Greene turned his attention back to South Carolina, beginning a successful campaign to reclaim the state from British control despite a setback at Hobkirk's Hill. With the support of militia commanders and significant victories, such as the Siege of 96 and the capture of Augusta, Georgia, British control was effectively pushed back to just Charleston and Savannah in their respective states. After resting his troops, Greene clashed with British forces at Eutaw Springs on September 8th. The battle, though technically a draw, devastated British forces enough to confine them to Charleston for the war's remainder, as beautifully commemorated by American poet Philip Freneau. When Cornwallis arrived in Virginia, he took control of the British forces there from Benedict Arnold, and then from Major General William Phillips, who was a close friend of Cornwallis and died just 2 days before Cornwallis reached Petersburg. Cornwallis had marched to Virginia without informing Clinton, another British commander, about his movement because messages between them took ages, sometimes 3 weeks, since they had to be sent by sea. Once in Virginia, Cornwallis began to destroy American supplies in the Chesapeake area. Back in March 1781, knowing the threat Arnold and Phillips posed, General Washington had dispatched the Marquis de Lafayette to Virginia to defend it. Lafayette, although young, led 3,200 men, but the British forces in the state outnumbered them more than twice, with 7,200. Lafayette managed to avoid a full-on battle with Cornwallis, while he awaited additional troops to reinforce him. During this period, Cornwallis received orders from Clinton to select a location on the Virginia Peninsula, which was referred to as the Williamsburg Neck in letters at the time, and to construct a facility where naval ships could be securely stationed. By obeying these commands, Cornwallis positioned himself in a location where he could easily be encircled. And encircled he indeed became. The French fleet, under the leadership of the Comte de Grasse, along with a combined French and American army led by General Washington, thwarted Cornwallis's attempts to escape. Then, when Admiral Thomas Graves and the Royal Navy were defeated by the French at the Battle of the Chesapeake, and the French received additional reinforcements from Newport, Rhode Island, Cornwallis's situation deteriorated further. He was left with no option but to surrender to General Washington and the French commander, the Comte de Rochambeau, on October 19, 1781. Following this, Cornwallis had to inform Clinton about the defeat. He began his letter with these words: "I have the mortification to inform your Excellency that I have been compelled to relinquish the posts of York and Gloucester, and to surrender the troops under my command by capitulation on the 19th instant as prisoners of war to the combined forces of America." When the British were defeated at Yorktown, with French forces playing a crucial role in the battle, the loss of Cornwallis's army marked a turning point. The British war effort essentially came to a stop. The only significant British army left in America was under Sir Henry Clinton in New York. However, Clinton, stunned by the defeat, didn't take any further action and was replaced by Guy Carleton in 1782. This surprising turn of events, especially after a rare defeat at sea, helped to shift British public opinion against continuing the war. The government led by Lord North fell, and a government that favoured peace came into power. As a result, no major British operations were launched in America for the rest of the war. While the Battle of Saratoga had begun the downfall of British hopes in the Revolution, the defeat at Yorktown rang its death bell. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.